Hi, my name is Glenda Delgado. I've worked in the film industry for over a decade. I started out in creative development and I even got to work directly for Robert Rodriguez. I'm actually wearing a cruise shirt for Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. And through his guidance, actually, I decided to embrace my own creative voice and become a filmmaker. I've also been consulting. I'm a script consultant. I've been doing that for also over a decade, just using my experience in creative development and my history and knowledge and education in storytelling. And through that, and because of that, I want to talk about Sinners. And I want to discuss why I feel that it's a very strong screenplay and why Ryan Coogler deserves that Oscar for this script. There's so much that he did with this script that I think is powerful and beautiful. And there are a lot of essays out there. There are a lot of videos, a lot of content that I've watched myself. So I'll try to keep this fresh and unique. I'm going to try to address things that I don't think I've seen and make this a bit educational for you and share a little bit about my own journey through this as I'm also writing and developing a vampire screenplay. I've been doing it for a very long time, actually. And so seeing his film was quite an inspiration and definitely want to tap into his creative force and the way he approached this. And I want to share that journey with you as well. So part of my journey with writing my own screenplays, I've also done some ghostwriting. I've written some shorts that one of them you can find on my channel. They both have won awards. Part of my journey is kind of breaking down a screenplay. I've broken them down before as a consultant. I go very detailed, go through every page and try to give suggestions on how to make a story stronger, what it needs and what I do, what I love, what I don't love. But with my journey becoming a filmmaker and embracing my own creative voice, I'm approaching you could say the James Cameron method, or a lot of tech people do this as well, where you take something apart and you build it back together again to understand the process and understand what makes it work. And I would embrace that as part of your journey as you're writing and directing, to take apart the art and put it back together and find your own voice, find the strengths, find the patterns. And in storytelling, what I've been doing is you'll find different suggestions on how to break down and create your screenplay. One that I've enjoyed seeing is seeing the 15 to 20 beat structure. And I've seen that in Let the Right One In, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I've been, obviously watching a lot of vampire films for my own research. And for me, I've been doing it to understand the history of vampires, both in cinema and in history, but also to understand why do I personally want to tell a vampire story, which I think I discovered for me why. Growing up in LA in the 90s, films like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula and Interview with the Vampire and Lost Boys, and also because I think Latinos, we are just drawn to darker genre stories. I think it's a way of being able to tell our stories, but indirectly, and that's the beauty of horror and sci-fi and genre. It's approaching something personal or social issues and using that as a medium. I think it's a way of approaching it where it's not so in your face. Not that I don't love direct drama, because I love that as well, and I love to have a good cry in a movie. But for the vampire genre specifically, I've been watching them and studying them, and one thing I've been doing, as I mentioned, is breaking them down. And so with Sinners, I did see a 20 beat structure. I wrote down those beats and I want to share some of them with you. I don't think that, I want to go through all of them. And also with this video, I think there's going to be so much that I won't be discussing, because Sinners, there's so much in this film, so much that he did in this film. He even had, I think, 6 to 8 consultants on the film, because it was so important for him to tell something truthful and deep and powerful and not forget about the culture. And the fact that he had those consultants is incredible, and something that I hope and want to do with my own film, and have been speaking to consultants for my film as well. And so what I want to start with, first beat and the opening, is Annie's opening and introducing the mythology and making it simple and digestible for us viewers, and talking about the Griots. And I want to go ahead and read that to you because it's just so beautiful and powerful and just sets the stakes, sets up the world instantly. These are legends of people born with the gift of making music so true. It can pierce the veil between life and death, conjuring spirits from the past and the future. In ancient Ireland, they were called Fili. In Choctaw land, they call them firekeepers. And in West Africa, they're called Griots. This gift can bring healing to their communities, but it also attracts evil. This is said twice. Once as just sharing the mythology, and the second time as testimony. I think this is really important. And like I said earlier, he sets up the world in just one sentence. And he is merging different mythologies and saying this exists in different cultures and shows them in the film, from the Irish to the Choctaw, and also through Annie. Annie is the foreteller, the person that holds the mythology. And I love that she's a woman that's doing this. The way he writes women in this screenplay is incredible, and mothers no less. So I love that opening. I think it sets up the world. The next thing he does is he does a little teaser with Sammy, and when he goes into the church, and then we show him later in his ordinary world. We show the cotton fields for the first time. And something that I documented is that he showed the cotton fields about 7 times. And even that journey, the depth of which he goes, and the way he gives everything, it's almost a 3 act structure. Every little thing, even the cotton fields, gets its own journey. We're seeing it in its ordinary world through Sammy. Then we see it the way that Smoke and Stack go through the fields and they're setting up their new world, the way Delroy talks about his experience, and when we see prisoners in the fields, then we see, just a family working in the fields. Like there's a journey there. And then in the end, we see one final shot of Sammy with Smoke and in the car and going through the fields and showing the fields in a different way. It was like what Sammy says. It was like the one night of, I'm paraphrasing, but the one night of freedom. That was that day he remembered. And for Stack, it was like the last day he saw sunlight. Just so beautiful and powerful writing. Something that WUNMI said in one of her interviews is that she read the script every day, and she did that because she felt like Ryan Coogler was doing that too, because every day there was a little asterisk, a little extra something that added to the script. For example, in the end, when she says Elijah, and just that little line changes the weight of that scene. It changes everything. And screenwriting is all about little choices. And when you're writing, you'll see this. I think, when I'm reading, I appreciate this. It's just a lot of little decisions that you're making, and each one carries weight. It means that you care about this project. And something she said in the interview too that I agree with is that, sometimes if you're gonna keep reaching for perfection, that could stunt you and that could stop you. But I do think that with the art of film, it is a lot of adjusting and specifically writing. The saying is, you may already know, writing is rewriting. So I think that's so important as you're writing your screenplays, even for myself, that you keep exploring how to make it stronger, all those little moments that make it stronger. And he definitely did that. And I could see why early on, I think he said he was 17 when his teacher told him that he should be in films. Like, I think he has a natural gift, but in the same way as sportsmen, which he also is and was, trains, like they have natural talent, then they continue to train to build on that talent. He already has that within him, so he does that with his writing. He has a lot of natural talent where I think he does a good job of making things cinematic, and then trains and keeps working and workshopping his material to make it the best possible material that he can give to people. So I kind of wanted to have a beer with you guys, specifically an Irish beer in homage to Sinners, something that I did with Sisu. If you want to go back and watch that, I have a beer with you guys and I discuss the history and the backstory of the world of Sisu and my own little review, non-spoiler review. And so I thought about doing that for this, but one, it's early, and two, there's something else I discovered about Ryan Coogler's process, and that's his acts of service. I love exploring his journey. I love learning about his process. I love hearing him in his interviews because I feel so connected and feel like we have similar perspectives, similar things we want to show in our films. We have similar backgrounds. And most of all, I just love that he's humble. I have worked in this industry for a very long time, so obviously I've seen the good, bad, and ugly. And I even discuss a little bit about it in my short film Yanantin. Specifically, when I became pregnant, I did have to walk away. Well, I didn't have to, but I chose to walk away and have something a little bit more balanced for me, where I was consulting artists directly on my own time instead of working for a studio. And through that journey, I did lose some friends. So that part has been difficult. I obviously still am connected to a lot of people in the industry, and there's a lot of good people too. But whenever you hear about a good person and about people who just want to make the art and love the art, it's a good feeling. And so one of the acts of service that he talks about is making coffee for his cast and crew, which I love and I think is beautiful. I think it's something that he loves and wants to share with others. And so making coffee for someone else is really kind. So I'm drinking a coffee out of my Dia de los Muertos cup, which I felt was appropriate. It embraces my cultura. So cheers, let's have some coffee together. The next thing I want to talk about is the church scene and incorporating that Bible verse. So Ryan Coogler chooses Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. I think this is really important, and another way that he sets the stage and kind of foreshadows the entire film, like just brilliant what he's doing there. First of all, Ryan Coogler was raised Catholic. I believe he went to a Catholic school. So it could be him questioning certain aspects about the church, maybe not religion specifically, honestly, but maybe about the church because, Sammy does get tempted, right? They're all tempted, and we'll talk about the symbolism of the vampires in a little bit, but, he did overcome it, and his salvation was music, which is what his preacher father didn't want him to do. So to me, and I could be wrong, and I'd love to hear what you think. But to me, the interpretation was more that the power of religion, and he's incorporating many different religions and mythologies in this, it's powerful through our own interpretation of it, right? I think maybe he's questioning how the church views temptation and how the church takes control. Actually, if you really want to go back, the church did control music for a very long time. So wow, just realizing that there's also that connection there and what he's talking about there, and questioning religion's power and beholding of music for a very long time, and the way it was viewed, right? When rock music did come to the foreground, it was viewed as devil music, and rock did evolve from blues music, which is what this film is based on. So he's just connecting so many threads here and creating something really intricate and beautiful. And yeah, it's up to us to decide what that means for Sammy. But I think that it doesn't mean that he doesn't believe in religion, but maybe he doesn't believe in the way some people use religion, and maybe possibly in narcissistic ways. And a lot of people are questioning right now, obviously politically, how they're using the Bible to do dark things. So I love this. I love that he set that up with this, that it's not just, certain mythology, it's even also the biggest, most practiced mythology and book in the world, and how important that is in Black and, even my own culture, in most cultures now, but how important that is in Black culture. The next thing I want to talk about is the way Ryan Coogler writes women, where do I start? Because they were all written so beautifully and so strong, and I can tell that he loves women. He loves them for who they are and the power they behold and what motherhood does to them. We are first introduced, I think before, I forget if it was WUNMI or Annie or Grace were introduced first, but I'll start with Grace. How powerful was she? How also enigmatic and beautiful and layered. I love that she was the matriarch who was negotiating directly with Smoke. And she has her, this is what I love too, is that I think he kind of gives each moment, each character, as I mentioned earlier, a 3-act structure. So she's introduced into her ordinary world, she's introduced to a new world when she's at the party, and then her call to adventure is to battle these vampires in the end. And wow, the fact that we felt the pain, he let that pain within her build, and how he's able to do this with so many characters in the story is incredible and still make something compelling and cohesive. Is That's, storytelling at its finest. So I definitely think we all should be studying his screenplay. But it builds, right? She sees her husband, he's inviting her to come out, and she starts worrying about Grace, and it's a small build, and or sorry, her daughter. Grace starts worrying about her daughter, and she's the one that opens the door and lets them in and sets herself aflame, and while she's in flames, kills a freaking vampire. That's just badass, and if that's not motherhood at its finest, I don't know what is. And then Moonme, I mean, wow. Like, I feel like we all can see how precious and beautiful and unique and gorgeous and deep and just perfect her portrayal of Annie is. Like, it's just soothing when she talks. Her presence is soothing. There's wisdom in the way she walks and talks, but in the way he writes her too. And when she's talking about using her hoodoo on Smoke, and he asks a question of why didn't it work on our kid. Well, that's just so powerful and deep, and he goes there. You should go there to those tough places when you're writing, and it doesn't become a big argument. It's just they're kind of in this shared pain. She just says, I don't know, because even when you know a lot of mythology and you're spiritual and you're well studied, there's just things we don't know, right? But she knows it worked for him. And also that little sound effect that he did when she's speaking to him was incredible. But she has a journey too. She's in her stasis and willing to take money that will go nowhere to help her community. And those are little choices that you can do to help set up character, right? She's making little choices that help us understand who she is as a person. Instead of telling us, he's showing us by having that little girl come in and accepting money that, as Smoke says, will not help her. Then she accepts her call to adventure to help Smoke with this new venture, even with through all their history and drama, and the sensuality and beauty of also their scene was beautiful and felt real, not something grotesque, something that like they're spiritually connected, emotionally connected, and physically just connected. And then her ending and the way I mean, again, he's like drawing out these stories for these characters, and her telling him, I don't want to become one of these vampires. You need to take me out. I'm going to join my daughter. I'm going to join my kid. And she makes Smoke promise that, and we all know it's coming. And when it comes, it's still so painful. And I was crying when when Smoke had to do that. It makes me emotional thinking about it, and the way he writes these scenes, like that itself could be its own little movie. He's writing like little movies within each story, within each character. Mary's journey with being of mixed race and what that represents for her, and her feeling like she had to be sold off and didn't ask for that just for her own protection by Stack, and then them reconnecting, and their story also has like a beginning, middle, and end. It costs kind of no end since now they're vampires living forever. I'm really impressed with how he wrote the women, how truthful their stories felt to the female experience and the layers and different types of female experiences. yeah, that's a good writer, someone who can give each character a beautiful backstory and a beautiful journey. You may not always be able to do that, but he did it and it worked and it didn't feel convoluted. The next thing I want to talk about is the vampire mythology and how he uses vampires in this film. It's definitely certainly generational trauma is something that's discussed as a usage for it. And then another concept that was discussed with Ryan Coogler in an interview, which I find interesting as well, was the idea of Marxism and capitalism and how the vampires sort of represent that and how the party inside is rejecting it. How, with the way that their hive mind approach to using the vampires and the way that Remick wants to take something from the Black community for his own purpose. And because this because this film is really based on music, you could also see how has been appropriated, a little vampiristic, right? So I mean, that's what I saw. I've seen a lot of different conversations online actually about what the vampires in Remick represents, from spiritual to cultural to systemically. But I'd love to know your thoughts, and I think that's what good art does, though, is that it makes us think and it makes us ask questions. So it's not really about what I think, but what it means to you. I think we should be. I love that he's like indirectly doing things and forcing you to ask questions and forcing you to look into these things and maybe entering your subconscious in some way. So there's lots to say. I think that's what makes this story and this writing eloquent and powerful and beautiful. And speaking about vampires, let me take another sip of coffee. How cool was it when Annie says these aren't HAINTS, these are vampires, and the beat drops? I felt, and maybe I'm wrong, and I guess this is more in the way he told the story and the directing and the editing and the sound, but I'm sure it was in the writing too. But it feels like he's like, I love vampire movies. I'm still a film nerd. He, in fact, did a private screening of Sinners for my former boss and friend, Robert Rodriguez. You know, I think that he's saying there in the way that it was done, when the beat drops and you're almost transitioned into a whole other film, and she says they're vampires. I feel it's celebrating his geekdom and his love of cinema. Okay, so earlier I mentioned how the Cottonfields have a story of their own and go through their own process, and how he does this with the characters and give them their almost 3-act structure. Well, guess what? He also did this through the songs that Remick sings, which is awesome. The storytelling never stops with Ryan. The first song that Remick sings, "Pick Poor Robin Clean," is actually African American song. So discussing earlier about the vampirism of the music industry and how so much of that culture is stolen and appropriated, it makes so much sense that he would start with that song, and also trying to appeal to them, right? Using the idea of the vampire being seductive and trying to get his way in through using their own music. But then the next song, "Will You Go, Lassie Go," it's like he's getting closer to his roots, and it is an Irish folk song, and it's also foreshadow for Mary leaving the party and leaving the group. And then finally, the song that he's singing when he's already got this large hive mind is "The Rocky Road to Dublin." And at that point, it's almost like over half of the party with him, over half of the Black community with them. So he's vampiristically using them in a way to finally be able to embrace his own culture and his own connection and power to music, his own way of breaking the veil, right? So that he can connect to his ancestors, as he says. He's using them. And he finally does that with his final song in "The Rocky Road to Dublin." And at that point, he's like, I'm closer to who I am and my roots and where I belong and where I came from. And he used Black community to do that. So I also want to make sure that I mention the party itself. My goodness, like, as a writer, I don't know if it was hard for him, but that has to be both a difficult scene to direct and write. He was developing a lot of those stories that I've mentioned more. Even Perline and Sammie's story, showing conflict with Mary and Stack, Smoke and Stack, Annie, Grace, running the show confidently and walking around and catching Sammie and just like leaving with a smile, and just all these little moments. These are little moments and choices that all add to the vibe and add to what that party meant for this community. It meant freedom, but it also meant that he had to develop the story within that one small place. And you'll hear the term unity of space, particularly in theater, and it almost feels like a play in that sequence. Like everybody's in the scene acting in one area, telling a different story within one space. And it's powerful. All the moments push the story forward. Obviously, we all love all the music that's sang in that party. The biggest moment when he sings "I lied to you," and he breaks the veil, as Annie mentions in the beginning, and we're seeing the past, present, and future of music and cultural music and arts all in one room in the safety of this place. Powerful and beautiful. And he doesn't give us just one song, he also gives us Pale Pale Moon. Jamie Lawson kills it in that scene, and hands down, that was probably very difficult, very fun to write, and powerful. And that's where he took the time to give more storylines to every character and a moment for every character, including Delroy, everyone. And it's just powerful and so well written. Just that alone we can probably talk about for hours. So let's have a little coffee to that party. Cheers to that. I wish I could have been there, or, I am a nerd and go to a lot of fan events. How cool would it be to have that place recreated for everyone and have it feel like free and a place to embrace the arts. Yeah, it's just such a powerful scene. Next thing I want to talk about is the return with the ELIXIR, which is a hero's journey element. So I talk about the hero's journey a lot on this channel, developed by Joseph Campbell, based on A Hero with a Thousand Faces, and its exploration of different cultures and different mythologies and seeing all the similarities. Something that I learned recently through a friend that I should have known but hadn't heard about it till recently was the heroine's journey. And basically, with storytelling, these are all just tools, and Joseph Campbell himself will say that the journey doesn't have to be in the order that you see it. It can be in any order, or sometimes a lot of missing pieces, but I think those rules can be applied to a spiritual journey. But regardless, all this to say is that Smoke and Sammie return with the ELIXIR, and to me it's more symbolic. It isn't physical, like with your salvation and with the salvation maybe for others, with your own salvation and your own reward from the journey you just took. And for me, Smoke, he lets go in the end. Also, he gives us a really cool moment where he realizes, because he really wanted this place to succeed, and he learns through this journey through Remick, it was going to be a slaughterhouse. And I love that in the end it was a slaughterhouse, but a different kind, and he took down those freaking Nazis, awful, evil, demonic people. As they say in cinema, if you introduce something, you gotta use it. And so, they showed the machine guns and he used it. It was just brilliant and awesome, and such a great fan moment, and a great moment for the culture and for the community, and even for what's happening today in this world. But then he still has an extra powerful moment where, again, like, his ELIXIR is just embracing Annie's Hoodoo, and he has a vision of her, and oh my god, that vision was just so powerful and beautiful, and she's holding the baby, and it just, that made me cry. To be able to, within this film about music and vampires, all these things, also include the journey and the pain of miscarriage. Wow. Or the loss of a child. I say miscarriage because it seems like maybe it happened during birth. I actually don't think they ever really explain how the baby died, but because it was so little, I assumed it miscarried, or was possibly a stillborn. Wow. I mean, that moment is just powerful, and he goes home. He goes home to Annie. And Sammy decides to trust his gut, trust his heart, embrace the arts, which, you know, I think the film also says that the arts brings you closer to a spiritualness. We see that through him playing the music and breaking the veil. And the fact that he used the guitar to kill Remick is just like so symbolic and cool. He used the one thing that Remick was trying to take from him to kill him. Incredible. And Sammy obviously has a very successful journey and a beautiful journey. And the last thing I want to talk about is the post-credits scene. How marvelly was that? One thing I would love to ask him is, what did he take from working on huge Marvel films and all the other films he's worked on as well? What did he take from that, and what did he bring from that to this? Obviously, maybe it was a post-credits scene, which I think was such an homage and so cool, and that final post-credits scene also maybe sets up for a possible sequel. So it's like he's doing these powerful things, but also having fun, right? It's just, to me, writing at its finest. We all can like different things, and that's okay. But to me, when someone says, I want to write about music, I want to do something to honor my uncle, and then suddenly it's about motherhood, the loss of a child, about Black community coming home and trying to have their own sovereignty and business, and having it being tried to be taken away, having vampires talking about the journey of music and the power of music, incorporating several different mythologies. I could go on and on. That's probably why a lot of these video essays are so long if you've been watching them. Suffice to say, it deserves the Oscar for Best Screenplay because so much passion and work was put into that, and a good movie starts with a good story, and I think he did that. But there's so much to talk about. Feel free to comment below. I know I missed a lot. There's just so much. I just try to discuss a few things that make me passionate about this film, a lot of the storytelling about it, because I am a script analyst and I want to help you see what's powerful in this, or just have a shared experience where we both just see how powerful and beautiful this story is and how great he told it. Let's keep discussing it. I plan to do more videos. I want to talk about book adaptations. I just finished reading Wuthering Heights, so I want to make a video about Emerald Fennell and her adaptation. I want to continue talking about my process as a filmmaker. If there's anything that you want to see, if you want me to talk about my break-in story or my journey in filmmaking, let me know. I have so much to share and so little time, so I can't promise that my posts will be as regular as some people, but they will keep coming, and I hope they're helpful. If anything, I hope they're enjoyable and you feel like you have someone to share your love of these certain things with. And with that, I will say goodbye, and I hope you like and subscribe. For me, that's validation to do more. I'm also a script consultant, so if you want to hire me directly, feel free to email me. I'm here to help and to just geek out together. So I hope to see you in the next one.